Welcome back to the final episode for our AI. Just for now, because we want to move on to some other stuff, and we could go on all day with AI, so let's get into it. Last time we ran into a problem where our enemy was only going to stab us once or attack us once and then just stand there like an idiot. So I've done my troubleshooting and I've figured out what the problem was. Go down to AI and BT_enemy if you're following this from a fresh start. And inside BT_enemy, let's have a look at what the behavior tree is doing. Starting at the root, the behavior tree is picking between these two sequences using this selector. Over here, the blackboard is set to if we cannot see the hero, and here the blackboard is set to if we can see the hero. So the selector is going to make a decision based on either one of these. So because we have the patrol first, that is which will most likely happen first in just about every situation, because imagining the character starts off screen from the enemy and then the enemy sees the character, and that's going to be the repeat encounter. So patrol is normally going to be the very first thing. Then, once the enemy has seen us, the selector will switch over here to this sequence. And then we drop down to these guys over here. And just for a refresher, in case you are doing this as I release them, this blackboard key is set so we're not chasing until we fire this sequence, and then we've set that to true so we can only play this event once. And then we move down here. So the first thing I want to do, just to simplify this, and this isn't the key problem, mind you, I just want to make sure that we're being as safe as possible when we're designing our script and we avoid any potential errors. So the first thing I want to do is, instead of firing this blackboard key right off of this event, I actually want to put that on a sequence. So drag out, let's type in sequence, and plug a sequence into this here. So that sequence is going to sit between the move to and this selector, and you can click and drag that blackboard key over to that sequence as well. I'll just make some room. Something like that. I'm not going to spend all day cleaning this up because this blackboard tree is going to get much more complicated if we revisit this in the future. The other thing I noticed is that our custom move to location, if we double click on this task over here, we set finish abort if it fails. And sometimes it is going to fail to move to, because if we have a look at our map, we are checking for a 1000 radius around us as to where the random location is coming from, which was done inside of our get location. But if the location is, say, over here off the map, the radius isn't checking if it's within this green range here. That's just what the AI can do. So if it's going to fail, we just want it to move on. We just want it to get on with the task. It doesn't matter if it fails. We'll get the enemy to fail wherever he fails, wait, and move on. So in move to location, let's grab on fail and shove that into finish execute. So whether we succeed or fail to move to the location set by that blackboard key, we're just going to get on with our day. So compile and save that. Now for the build-up. Remember how when we started this, and I should have remembered this, so this is my bad. Remember how when we started, I said that on failure, a sequence will stop dead in its tracks, but a selector will move on. So this selector, when this key is false, will move on to this key, which is true. But if this was a sequence, then it wouldn't move on. It would just stay here and never move past that. And that's exactly what's happening with this sequence here. Let's have a look. So when this sequence fires, the first thing we do is print string, play sound, wait a second, and then set is chasing. So that's the first sequence. And we only want that to fire off the very first time. And then the sequence here, you can probably already see where I'm going with this. This sequence then moves on to this selector, and that selector picks whether the target's in range or not. Then we shoot all the way back up to the root. The second time the sequence comes down, it fails here because this has been set to true in is chasing, and this is false. So the sequence doesn't know to move on, which is exactly the same thing that was happening over here. If this failed, we didn't just move on and continue on with our day. So here's the solution. Right click and type in selector. Drag off of this selector onto this selector from the root, selector to selector. Drag this blackboard key over here so that instead of a sequence coming out of hero is set, we then go on to a selector. So then we'll drag down, reconnect these guys over here so that the second time after the enemy has attacked, when the root comes back down, it doesn't matter that this is false. That's what we wanted. We just keep going on with the script and there's no more roadblocks. So that's the reason that our enemy was only attacking once. And it might sound like I'm talking a lot, but I really want you guys to understand how this works, because you might run into an error like this. And so if you understand how someone who's been doing this for years can sometimes get caught up in stupid little things, hopefully it helps you to troubleshoot things yourselves. So let's save that and see that in action. We'll close that move to location. We'll hit play. And there we go. The stabbing has begun, and he keeps stabbing because the sequence keeps firing. And if I let him stab us, he'll kill us, and then he'll start chasing us as soon as we're not there anymore. And then he'll start stabbing again. And there we are. We actually haven't done anything for what happens if we die because we haven't had anything to kill us yet, but we'll get to that later. Another really cool thing I want you guys to see is that if I hit play on this and then I shoot over to the behavior tree actually plays live. And if I was to hold the Windows key and press the right arrow and then select this window over here, you can see what's happening in the game mode with a really messed up aspect ratio. And you can see what's going on in the behavior tree simultaneously. So you can see every time it's refreshing that over and over again to make sure that it's making the right decisions. The behavior tree is designed to be troubleshooted as you go, being that it is such a large and complex thing. Most other script will work the same way too. You'll see it fire off live, but with the behavior tree, it's really important to see what's going on. I also deleted the enemies so that I could focus on just the one enemy, and if I bring them back in, then when I hit play and open up the behavior tree, this drop-down menu allows me to select between them. So I can check which enemy is doing what. And this is another reason why I deleted it, because there's no significant identifying factors at the moment to which enemy is being selected. So it was best to just focus on the one enemy. And once you've got one enemy working, the rest should come together. So that's our behavior tree pretty much done. One other thing I'll show you is that we can actually name these sequences. So over here, we can name this node so it's easier for us to understand, and maybe this will work as a good revision. So I'll just go through and name a few of these with you. The first Blackboard key will say can't see hero, and we'll name the sequence patrol. Then we'll name this can see hero. We'll name the rest of the Blackboard keys. So this would be is not chasing. So kind of the same as the Blackboard key, only it's much easier to see from a distance, and is chasing. We can change this to is not in range. And then this one to is in range. And this one's pretty obvious. This is our attack sequence, so we'll call this attack. This one's our chase. And later on too, we could also play a sound so that it alerted the enemies around us, because along with our sight sense is also a hearing sense. But again, we want to move on so we can do other things, and that stuff's getting pretty complicated. So if we come back to it, it'll be in a later episode. I've had some requests to move on to weapons, so that's what we're going to do after this episode. So you can see I've left the selectors as they are, because realistically it is self-explanatory what it's doing. It's selecting between these two, but you can see how that's already a much easier behavior tree to read just by naming them. So that's pretty good there. I hope you have a good understanding of how behavior trees work, and I hope that you get really creative with designing your own behavior trees as well. And hopefully by the time we come back to this, I can add to that knowledge in a later tutorial. But next time we're going to be working on our weapons now that we have something to shoot. So I'll see you guys in that episode.